Our next panel focuses on alternative methods of learning. So without further ado, I'd like to invite to the stage Akua Obeng-Frimpong, Head of Business Development at Zealous. Akua will be leading the discussion with our panel, and I will leave it to her to introduce everybody. So please welcome them all to the stage.
Hello everyone. As Louise said, I'm Akua Obeng-Frimpong and I work in business development for Zealous. Our topic now is alternative learning, the latest means and methods to boost creativity in our workplaces, classrooms and our lives. With me today are three guests from the worlds of design, music and technology who are going to share their experiences to unpack the opportunities available to acquire creative knowledge and skills. Sarah McLachlan, Learning Development and Strategy Manager at Makerversity. Oliver Morris, Director of Education and Skills at UK Music. And Zoheb Iqbal, Co-founder at Startup Weekend. So I'd like to start with a fuller introduction from each of our panelists. Perhaps, Sarah, you'd like to go first.
Yes. Going to use this. Good afternoon. I'm Sarah McLachlan. As she said, I'm the Learning Development and Strategy Manager at Makerversity. Makerversity is a co-working space based in the basement at Somerset House. We have about 170 different members. Make up 60 businesses that cover a really vast area range of design businesses. So our members make all sorts of things from technology, websites, to fashion and textiles, to really day-to-day objects like refrigerators and things like that. We have loads of facilities at our space that members can use. We have workshops that cover textiles and CNC machines and digital labs, photography studios and a wide range of things. I've been working in, I guess, what you'd call alternative or creative learning for about 13 years. I used to work in the music industry as a promoter, and then I started working with young people in a music studio in Camden. And we used to have a recording studio there. We worked with young people and developed skills with them in DJing and in songwriting and all sorts of different things. We had a professional development program, so we worked with industry and supported young people that wanted to get signed. So we supported early sort of development of careers for people like Plan B, some of the guys from Rudimental, some of the members of, I can't remember their names. Phaser from N-Dubs, and some other young people that have kind of come through and done really well in industry. From there, I worked in Greater Manchester, covering the whole of the 10 boroughs, doing loads of creative projects with young people. We did some really interesting work. We worked with some travellers in Wigan and developed animation skills with them. We did some dance projects. We did all sorts of different things, including a pervasive gaming project, which we ran in Old Trafford, which was freezing cold in the rain and worked brilliantly. And then in 2012, I started up a charity with Plan B called the Each One Teach One Trust, which was based just down the road, actually, just in Hackney. And we were set up specifically to support small organisations working with young people to develop skills for the future. So we funded and supported a whole range of organisations that developed professional skills, and one of those was Makerversity. So we supported and funded their early development and helped them to buy some equipment and get their kind of name out there in 2013. So that kind of brings me back round, I guess, to why I'm here today. At Makerversity, I look after the learning element, so we do a whole range of things for young people, both inside Somerset House and externally. For school-age children, we've developed 10 lessons with our members that cover a lot of design thinking and maker skills, and we take those into schools. And for older young people, we work primarily with the Prince's Trust and also at the moment with Centrepoint to develop design thinking and product design skills with those young people. And from there, we also take them on to do work placements and get work within some of our member businesses. And we are also looking at things like apprenticeships, and we have an under 25 scheme. So anyone under 25 who wants to get into designing or making and needs some space, we offer a free program that for under 25s as well. If you want any more information, we have makerversity.education is our main website for the learning, and makerversity.org is the main site for the members. And that's it.
Hello, so I'm Oliver Morris from UK Music. which is the trade body for the recorded and live elements of the music industry in Britain. My role is Director of Education and Skills, so I'm running a number of programmes that UK Music support, and obviously our board members do as well. PRS, PPL, BASCA, Musicians Union, there's a number of bodies that sit on our board, so I take direction from them in the main. So starting with university level, we run a MAP, Music Academic Partnership, and that's a number of invited universities that we see as being especially important to development of skills in young people. So we're looking at LIPA, those that are interested in research as well, to try and support industry in the arguments around economics. So the Music Academic Partnership is an important element. I also look at apprenticeships, so that's quite an important element, which I'll sure talk more on later, because there's a large change around government policy towards apprenticeships at the moment, which we can touch on in a bit. Rehearsal spaces, so we have a network of rehearsal spaces that were set up in predominantly deprived communities to try and offer a route through for young people, information and the spaces to be able to rehearse, practice, and pursue a career in music. Because it's really important for us at UK Music to ensure that young people, no matter what their background, have that ability, that opportunity to work their way up and through and into them, because we're looking for talent, the best talent there is, to support our industry as we go forward, which, by the way, is very, very, as you would have noticed recently with Adele, and we'll talk about her latest album. It's a really important industry in this country and works especially well around soft power and our relationship with the rest of the world. And I also run Skills in Schools sessions as well, so that's where we again look to go out to schools and provide young people with information around learning, where the routes into the industry, whether that be through an apprenticeship, a college course, a higher education route. There's multiple ways into the industry, and I think it's down to me to ensure that they're all catered for and the thinking is sort of linked up. Personally, my background is working a lot around community development, a lot around education, and most recently finished a PhD looking at, well, I say finished, I've submitted and had my viva, and I've got rewrites. If anyone's done a PhD, it's quite a long, nightmarish process, but I wouldn't advise it. But so anyway, my PhD was looking at the economic and educational aspirations of young people in Wales, where I come from, and looking at post-industrial and rural areas, which is a big... Music industries are often at least thought of to be located in central city urban hubs, and it's important to link up with young people who are socio-economically or geographically isolated and help them see opportunities. And in this new digital age, that's becoming ever more possible. And going back further, I started working fundamentally writing music and theatre with young people, basically. So that's why my passion is in this field. And I think that's probably it. I'll cover. I'm sure I'll cover apprenticeships more. I had copious notes I was going to read from, but I think with 5 minutes I'll just let questions come at me and I'll reply. Okay, thanks.
Hello everyone, my name's Zoheb Iqbal. I'm part of Techstars community programs, initially being part of the Startup Weekend program, which is a 54-hour, similar to a hackathon where we encourage entrepreneurship in a closed environment where people work and hack on different ideas. We went on to produce Startup Next programs, which is a pre-accelerated program for 6 weeks. And it's all about encouraging entrepreneurship within communities. We're now in more cities than Starbucks, which is amazing. And it's all about encouraging entrepreneurship, helping them connect to venture capital, angel capital, to progress their ideas further. So our kind of motto that we go by is no talk, all action. So within a weekend, you can produce a MVP, which I'll go and talk a bit more about. And, you know, spurring on that entrepreneurship spirit within anyone, and anyone has a background to produce a business. So that's what we're about. My background, I'm actually a trained architect. I fell into entrepreneurship a couple of years ago, which is a funny story in itself. But now it's about helping communities grow, helping younger generations understand that, you know, anyone can start a business, anyone can access these great resources and tools to make the ideas happen.
Thank you, everyone. So now for our first question. Each of you sort of touched on aspects of youth, community growth, and I'm wondering actually whether, given the diversity of our communities, how are we preparing our workforce adequately for the future? And that might well be young people, but actually at the other end of the scale, older people who are looking to transition as well.
I think it's a massive issue, to be honest. I don't think we are in most cases. I mean, specifically at Makerversity, for example, out of the 170 members we've got, most of them are white, most of them are, I don't know all their backgrounds, but most of them have come from Goldsmiths and RCA. So as far as that's partly because we're still a start-up, we're only 2 years old, and a lot of them are friends and friends of friends, so that's kind of part of the reason. But I think from what I can see, there's a lot of people coming from certain communities and certain backgrounds, and especially economic backgrounds, with the cost of things like art college and even just general education. And I feel that there isn't a lot being done to sort of diversify that pool of people. Especially, having worked with a lot of young people from deprived backgrounds, where things like the creative industries are seen as a hobby and fun, which which is great, but still, a lot of young people are still pushed towards doing, focusing on a proper job, in inverted commas, and then maybe doing this creative thing on the side, and when they've got time, which just isn't the right approach, I don't think. So I don't think it's being done very well at the moment.
Just add to that, really. I think the stats actually back it up, that there's a higher proportion of sort of young people from well-off families who are able to make that transition, and I think that's why paid internships and knowledge around supporting young people while they're learning and living and learning the skills is vital. So UK Music put together a code of practice for internships around in music, and we encourage every company that's thinking about taking on internships not to take the easy option, which is to employ them with very little recompense at all, but to think seriously about the impact on them and long-term the industry. But especially, as we said, there's a lot of opportunities in London because it's quite a centre for music, as there are in other cities. But the living expenses, having moved here 5 months ago, are quite impressive, quite shocking. So they're definitely something to think about.
With that in mind, Oliver, what remit has UK Music got for ensuring that employers, sort of smaller employers, basically can provide for interns? Having addressed that London is an expensive city.
Yeah, sure. Well, it mainly comes from encouraging. Our members. We have multiple members on our board who have members themselves, so the membership organisations, and we're trying to through engagement and encouragement. But also there are programs. So apprenticeships again. I'll come back to, because that's our mine and I think the industry's preferred route. Because with apprenticeships you get the training element too, and there are minimum wage requirements, and there are also opportunities to get funded. So I've recently submitted and been successful around a creative employment programme grant for apprenticeships in music from CC Skills, which entitles each company who are engaging with us, who want to take on an apprentice, to be able to access £2,000 towards that wage for that year. And we're encouraging apprenticeships, especially because they provide the training alongside the in-work experience, and there's a support network. So you have the training provider, you have the employer, and then you have the apprentice. So we're encouraging that and looking at any ways we can to expand the number of paid positions for entry level in the music industry.
I'm quite hopeful in terms of Generation Y. I think the newer generations, especially, they're realizing, freelance experiences are going up. People are using more freelance talent in industry as well. So I don't think it's stopping. I don't think it will stop. It's just about educating employers that you have to train these people. And just touching on your points about people from poorer backgrounds, looking back at my education, I studied architecture for 7 years. If I had to pay £9,000 a year for a 7-year course, it would be impossible to do something like that. So it's about, opening people's minds to there are opportunities, and I think the wonderful time we're in is there's so many different platforms and experiences in terms of tapping into that. It's about educating people in terms of how they can approach their career in a wider remit of what they can do.
That's a good point, actually, the cost of training. I mean, we seem to put a lot of value on the sort of traditional educational modes, and often those have to be paid for. I mean, Zoheb, you started to talk about the fact that there are other opportunities to learn. Would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, definitely. Places like this, this is amazing, being set up by Zealous and Guy and the whole team. It's an opportunity for artists and people to collaborate. Some of the work that we do at Startup Weekend is about giving people a platform to discuss their ideas. And literally all we do is put interesting, passionate people in a room for 54 hours. And much like the video you saw previously, you give people an opportunity and a platform, and they can produce amazing things. So for Startup Weekend, we bring in designers, developers, and people with business backgrounds. And many people who have never really thought that their idea had any potential realize, oh wow, I've just networked with a whole bunch of people, and the aim is to actually accelerate them into producing a startup, MVP, which is a minimal viable product by the end of the weekend, which hopefully they can take that onto an investor or an angel. But it's just about connecting people to the right ecosystem, which is what we're hoping to do.
That makes me think about structure, because the Startup Weekend and your approach of action first is fantastic. But then in the kind of the wider landscape, where just going back to that point about how we value the traditional education methods, how do you then package an experience like Startup Weekend and make it presentable for those who view people's qualifications in the traditional way?
It's difficult. I think an education works both ways. We're going to have to educate a lot of the older industries in terms of how they work. As I said, freelance talent's on the rise. I think university students are realizing, that traditional degree might not give them the best experience in terms of getting a job. So it's about getting them into the mind frame that, you're going to have to experience different things and work in different industries and try different things. On my way here, I saw 15 different photographers taking pictures of, and I'm sure they're doing a fashion shoot on the way to, probably on the side as a freelance experience to their normal job. So I think it's about opening their minds to there's so many different opportunities out there. Oliver?
I was just going to say, I think employers and indeed educators are realising that enhancement is important and it is demonstrable on a CV. It makes the CV stronger. And so the universities we work with, part of our remit is to try and help them access industry, access opportunities for students. So like with production days, for example, where we can take a group of students in to a gig and they can see the process from start to finish. And that's delivered with our partners CC Skills, who are really central in this field. And yeah, I think people are starting to realise how important they are and look. And actually a connected point, look at soft skills that young people have. I mean that came out quite a lot in my research, and I don't know whether that's the bias of those people delivering education or because we're getting older and grumpier. I'm not sure, but it was a point that came out. So I think they're interlinked and important to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be a lot more role models that have come from an alternative background, really, because I think, if within industry, if people are looking at success stories and employers are looking at the people that are doing the best in whatever industry that is, there just needs to be a more diverse range for people to draw from, really, as far as where the stories come from and the successes come from. Because I think for me that one of the really exciting things about education at the moment is that there's so much available, so many online courses, so much flexibility that you can do, and you do need to be very kind of self-directed learning. So you can't just turn up online on Monday at 9 o'clock and your tutor's waiting there. You've got to kind of think and focus and do it yourself. But to me, that's one of the really exciting things, that somebody can sit in their bedroom and do that and it not cost them much money. And from that, kind of make some really good work and get, be successful. But it's just kind of, it feels like there's still a bit of a gap between that stuff happening and people, industries realising that those things are beneficial. And if it isn't YouTubers and
I think one of the key aspects of, if we're ever going to improve this situation we're in, is mentorship. That's the key Sarah just picked up on. We need more people in industry. There's probably a lot of you in the room right now who can, listen to the younger generation. We had Guy was actually one of our mentors for one of our startup weekend programs, and that was one of my favorite editions that we actually ran in London, because it was specifically derived for a younger generation from deprived backgrounds. And usually at these startup weekends and these hackathon kind of experiences, everyone's working on their laptops, hacking out different apps and stuff like this. And for this weekend, a lot of the kids didn't even have laptops. So it was about listening to their ideas, and by the end of the weekend, some of them were almost in tears, just having mentors like Guy who would sit down and listen to their ideas for the first time, and realizing, there are people out there who will listen to your ideas and believe in what you can achieve. So I think everyone, whether or not you feel you can mentor, you should actually approach younger people.
Actually, mentorship, I agree, is a really valuable thing. And perhaps there are people out there, as I touched on before, about the fact that there are people who want to transition. For them, mentorship actually could be a very useful way to do that. They can give something back at the same time. Would either of you like to kind of expand on what is a useful, or what might be a useful kind of format for that? What would be the key elements of making a successful mentorship relationship?
I think there's something about kind of a two-way skills swap, because I think if you see mentorship or that kind of older, younger sort of thing, just about the older person giving something to the younger person, it's a bit patronising, and they have experience, but they can also learn quite a lot. And I was talking to a friend recently about a new bank that's being set up as a startup that focuses just on that gets rid of money and focuses on trading in skills and trading in experiences, and the idea that if you've got some, if somebody's older and they're trying to get into a new industry, they've still got skills that they'll have learned in whatever they've been doing, and just finding a way of kind of saying, I'll give you 6 hours of, I don't know, learning how to build a shed, and if you can if you can show me 6 hours in how to access courses online or build something online, whether there's something like that can be established, I think could be really interesting.
I think that's a very important point, the idea that it's not a one-way relationship. There's things you can learn as a mentor as well. I mean, it's slightly different perhaps, but certainly our former apprentice, who is now employed by UK Music, she's of the younger generation. I'm a bit of a Luddite with technology, I have to admit, but she's definitely a digital native, as they're called these days, and she now takes care of all the design, in-house design. Beatrice is just fantastic, and a really fantastic addition to the team. So we allowed her to develop that side, and it's just worked out fantastically well.
I'm wondering whether we put too much weight. I mean, we've been talking about soft skills. Is there too much weight on specific knowledge over broader skills? I mean, we talked about the value, for instance, of somebody coming up with an idea, say, over the weekend, and how that can be demonstrable proof within a CV. I mean, can we expand more on expectation of having skills and, and going through a particular route or journey?
Well, I think that the point around skills is vital, because especially with graduates, I mean, I think that there's a sense that in the creative industries that graduates are highly qualified, but perhaps unskilled in the specific practical areas that they're looking for employment in. So that's being addressed by the enhancement programs that universities are looking at. But it is a question, and I think it's just a case of trying to encourage all training providers and young people to get that informal learning and seek it out for themselves, because sometimes it's just not on offer, unfortunately, and they need to seek it out and look for weekends like that and opportunities like this. So.
Yeah, I think for me, it starts at primary school level as well, really, because, a lot of the work we're doing at Makerversity with schools is about changing the way that design and technology is taught in schools, because of the focus really at the moment is so much on academic qualifications, and all the creative subjects are being kind of pushed out of the curriculum, especially if the baccalaureate comes in and all of the complications with that. And I think we're just trying to focus on kind of taking the the practical skills that you might learn doing design and other things. But it's also it's things like the teamwork skills and problem solving, because I think if the education system carries on with just very, single-minded, sit down and, learn by rote, which a lot of it is still focused on, unfortunately, then you miss out on all of those things. And I think one of the things that we're finding talking to teachers is that there's a concern that young people are going to miss out on those things, and are then going to come out into a world that we can't really imagine yet, in one sense, and and be doing jobs that we don't know what they could be, and we'll kind of miss out on those really core skills, which learning to solve problems and working with each other is kind of pretty much it, in spite of everything else. So.
One thing that we say at Techstars is fail and fail fast, and that's one thing we need to encourage our younger people to is test your ideas, test different things, and don't be discouraged if one thing doesn't work. You've learned from that experience and just keep moving forward. I think that mentality is kind of changing in the UK as well. It's traditional systems aren't really working, and we're seeing there's a high unemployment. So maybe there are different routes and different ways we can approach this. And I think it's, especially educators, it's about encouraging younger people to just try different things and test their ideas and, not holding back. And there's so many different platforms now. There's really nothing stopping you from, achieving that idea.
I'm just going to say, following up on that, that ability to fail, which is so vital to learning, you'll usually only get that opportunity in informal learning spaces, won't you? Because the traditional learning, the formal learning spaces are all geared towards results and improving your worth. And I think it was Michael Jordan who said, his basketball quote here, he was asked why he was the most successful basketball players ever, and he said, because I was willing to stand up and miss 9 out of 10 hoops, but he just kept going and kept trying and had that confidence that came from but ultimately his failing, and he kept plugging away and learning.
This seems like a good point to expand more on the different opportunities that each of your organisations offer in terms of the alternatives, as the session is about. Who'd like to go first?
Well, I'll go first. I've talked a bit about the school stuff, but I think the programmes we're doing with older young people are quite interesting. So, we've worked with Prince's Trust now for 2 years, and we've just delivered the 3rd programme. So they just approached us and they do get started courses. So it's young people who are unemployed, and it's it's 5 days of full-time sort of training. So they choose they cover lots of different programs, and they just asked us to do product design. And to be fair, we've just made up the program. So rather than kind of taking it from something that's formal or accredited, we've just worked with each time we've worked with our members and come up with ideas, looked at who's doing what's happening in the industry, what kind of key skills they need to learn to develop product design skills, and we've just kind of developed the program from there. And it's just, it's kind of what I've always done with young people in a sense, because it's been informal. So it's not accredited, but it does allow it allows young people to actually get kind of real skills from the people that are doing it day to day, rather than it having to kind of fit into something that a body has decided is worthwhile. And so far, we've done completely different things each time, and we've got another 2 programs coming up that we're working on. And ideally, we're looking at how we can then transition that to become something a bit more accredited. So ideally, we'd run something that could be accredited by somebody that is flexible. But then from that, we then work with the young people that are the most keen to develop them and get them some sort of paid internships and paid work from there, so that it's not just you see us and then they're back to their sort of day-to-day. It's trying to kind of keep in touch with them. So that's something that we're hoping to develop a lot more.
Sorry, just before we move to the other panelists. So accreditation is important. Like, it's something you're working towards.
I think it's different. I mean, it's something I've always kind of avoided, really, because I always just thought, oh, it's too formal. I prefer, working with primarily kind of, disadvantaged young people and preferring to just work with creatives, work with young people and come up with something that we know kind of gets the results and builds confidence and things. But I do realise that, on a CV and from an employer point of view, especially if you're somebody that hasn't got a lot of formal qualifications, any qualifications are good. So I do think it still is important to have some sort of accredited body that can show that your work is relevant. But whether or not, it's just trying to find something that's industry that employers think is important, I think, rather than just kind of, another kind of educational thing that somebody's come up with.
Yeah, I guess it's important to set a standard. It sort of allows a level playing field for those who participate, right? Yeah.
Just I'm going to say that and often, I've worked with young people from disadvantaged backgrounds for 15 years or so. Often that lack of qualifications, the formal learning, is as a result of circumstance, not lack of ability. So, I mean, if there are nuanced or alternative ways to help young people demonstrate they have capacity, not just physical capacity, but mental capacity as well, I don't see any problem with that. And, I mean, to pick up one example of the sort of stuff we do, we have the rehearsal spaces, when we have them spread all over the country, 15 or so all over the country, one of which is in Tottenham. And Ellis, the studio, the guy who runs the studio there, him and I have been developing. So it came from a conversation about young people and how they approach music and how they make it. They often use other people's materials as a starting point with no idea about intellectual property or anything like that. So rather than go in and give a dry lecture on intellectual property, which I thought would go down like a lead balloon, we'd thought, well, how can we address this as an issue? Because it's important for us and important for young people to know about. And we came to the conclusion that we start from the other end. We start with their creativity, and we start with the songs they're making, and then sort of reel back from that. So it's a creative intervention. What we're looking at is a workshop, and then out of that we hope to recruit 10 or so that will stay on and complete an arts award, which is an accredited, recognised qualification. It's often project-based, and it offers something for the young people, and slightly less. It's semi-formal, I'd say, because the setting and what they get at the end, but it's still beneficial. And that's a model that I'm hoping to then be able to put online once we've written the course and share with other rehearsal spaces. And we have interest from the Intellectual Property Office on sharing the materials as well. So there's some, sometimes a little idea can really just help, spark interest and help young people. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and I like the sound of using the young people's creative inspiration as the starting point for that as well. It helps inspire their confidence in what they're doing and not puts it in a position of them as just being the recipients of the knowledge. They already come possessed with some knowledge.
They've demonstrated their skill. We're just helping them hone that and understand the nuances behind and around what they're doing.
Zoheb?
So the kind of environment that Techstars community programs provides is a risk-free environment, I would best describe it. It's almost giving, on the Friday, we give people the opportunity to pitch their ideas. So anyone with a fantastic idea in their head and never thought to actually make it, we give you the mic on Friday night and we give you 60 seconds to pitch it. And then by the end of the weekend, we've connected you with people who can actually make that idea a reality. So it's about creating a risk-free environment and connecting them to mentors and progressing them into funding their ideas later on. But it's all about just them testing and doing it. I think that's the one thing that we encourage the most, just kind of do it. Don't overthink your capacity to actually make something and produce something. So it's giving them the platform for experiencing that.
You just made me think about visibility of your programs. I mean, for instance, Oliver is with the rehearsal room program. You're going out to disadvantaged communities, so often you're having to reach out to find the potential talent to participate in the work. Do any of you have any comments about making your offering visible to those who are in need?
I think it's about working with local partners. That's the most important thing. I mean, all of the rehearsal spaces, they're often based at youth provision or a local arts centre, and they have people on the ground delivering the stuff. And when we're like we're a support, if you like. You know, it's a network, and we help support. And they know they have the buy-in of industry if they want to go for grants and this kind of thing. And on a wider, I mean, this year one of my tasks is to look at the network and look at funding to help the network, grow fundamentally. So I think local partners and local knowledge are key in successfully engaging with young people.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I'd echo that. I mean, I think partnership work is kind of the only way that we can get stuff out there. I mean, I've worked on programs before where we've had to recruit the participants directly and had to physically go out and do that, and it's really, really hard work. And unless you're kind of willing to do that, that be a majority part of your job. It's a really specialist kind of job, especially when you're trying to recruit people that aren't engaged. If they're going to turn up, if you're going to put a tweet out and they turn up, then you're probably not that bothered about working with them. They're probably all right, or they're probably getting on already. And I think we found that especially with us at the moment working with people like Prince's Trust, is that they do all that work, and they have a really big team. So they have somebody that does goes out and does the recruitment. They have somebody that looks after any problems or any housing. They've got all that stuff covered, so we can do the creative learning really well without having to worry about how many bums on seats and with our schools work. I mean, that's really hard work, kind of getting that out to schools, because the schools are so different and they've got so many different priorities. But again, with that, I mean, we're working with Ultimaker, who are a 3D printer manufacturer. And work because they already have a network of schools. We're also working with the Design and Technology Association, who are already in schools, and trying to kind of set up those partnerships so that we can reach a lot more people and get those people to do the stuff that they do well, so that we can do our bit well, I'd say.
Definitely touching on those points about having good relationships with your partners, and especially partners that fit within your brand. One of our primary partners are Google for Entrepreneurs, and it's kind of the relationship works so well because they're all about how we progress in terms of encouraging entrepreneurship. So it's about finding those right sort of partners, and organisations that we've worked with before, even big corporate firms like Aviva, are opening up to the idea of encouraging their own industries to hack and internally. So I think the situation's improving.
So with learning being a continuing journey, with all of the provision that your organisations offer, what is the ideal kind of stepping off point for somebody who's been through your process, if you know what I mean? So at what point do you think I've been successful with you, my job is done?
I think when they're making money, I think from our point of view, I think is for kind of either making money by getting a job, or with the startups that we have as members, when they're actually kind of they're selling products, they're selling their services. I think at that point, I mean, for us, we have for the young people, say, that have been through a program, we then have the under 25s where they come in and they're self-directed and they're there for 3 months working on a particular product or idea, and they're really supported during that period. But from them, they're kind of expected to sort of then come in and work on their own and look at paying for space and things like that, and developing their own business. And I think at that point, when they start to turn it from an idea into a business, that's when, for me, it's kind of they're successful. I mean, they're still always supported. I mean, one thing we do at Makerversity is the members aren't, they don't just, there's loads of co-working spaces in London, and people can come in and work and go home, but I think, our place, that people kind of collaborate a lot. We have a lot of kind of social events that go on, and we really encourage people to talk with each other and work with each other. So that sort of development kind of happens all the time as well, even with the adults and even with the much, the much older members. It's not it doesn't stop at a certain point. But I think for me, it's, when you're kind of making a living from what you love, and that's kind of for me is the point where you're kind of doing really well.
Yeah, and hopefully those members can feed back into the system
definitely.
as well. Yeah.
Just very quickly, with us is probably echo that in many of our programs, but obviously we work from school right up to university level higher education, so it varies from individual to individual. But I think having the confidence and having the knowledge around what routes there are available, I mean, if we can leave any young person with that and the confidence to follow their desires, that's all you can hope for, I think, really.
I think success is a relative term. To be honest, we've had startups who've gone on to raise millions, but what we really encourage at the end of the day is starting up individuals. In 5 years' time, some of them startups might not exist, but everything that you've learned from this experience still continues, and you can kickstart another startup or you can do something else. But it's all about kickstarting up individuals, and hopefully that process never leaves them until they pass away, and they become a mentor themselves, and hopefully they kickstart their own ecosystems in different countries and different environments, which is why I think Startup Weekend's running so successfully, because we're now in 150 different cities, because it's all about empowering communities at the end of the day, and empowering individuals from a grassroots level.
Brilliant, thank you. I think this might be a good opportunity to offer our audience the opportunity to ask questions. If we could get a roaming mic. Is there anybody who'd like to ask questions of our panelists? Just a second.
I'd just like to say thank you so much to Zealous. I mean, it's amazing. We're talking about entrepreneurship and kickstarting our economy. Having experiences in platforms like this is what's really going to kickstart our economy, and helping artists, giving them that platform is what's really going to progress our industry further.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that.
Hello. I was just wondering, in terms of the startup and entrepreneurship, what sort of support is out there? Obviously, you're doing Startup Weekend and things like that, but what else is there out there that you can get sort of advice, support, funding, things like that?
It depends what industry you're looking into. I mean, different industries have different remits in terms of support. Is there anything specific?
Well, I do freelance digital design.
Yep.
But I think it's more just getting ideas off the ground, not necessarily in design, but in any sort of market, just something that you enjoy or you're passionate about, and pushing that forward. So regardless of industry, sort of, support for that.
Support, I think the biggest difficulty these days for especially artists is promotion and getting the work out there. There's so many different voices in the industry now. So, keep pushing out your work, never stop. But it's also about connecting you to interesting people who can actually help you step to that next level, which is why we have interesting platforms to help you connect to mentors, who have already done it. Keep in touch with interesting people like Guy and the whole Zealous network, because they have them networks and those contacts, and hopefully you guys will carry on coming to these programs and interacting with each other. My background was architecture. I had no idea what was going on in entrepreneurship, but I met some really cool people. Guy and I used to work at Google Campus, which was one of the first spaces that kicked off this whole kind of Silicon Roundabout situation in East London, and things are progressing further for the community just because of the network. And the good thing about startup ecosystems is everyone's out there to help you. If you want to meet some interesting people, just hit up. You can contact me. You can contact anyone, and there's loads of people who are willing to help.
I'd echo that completely. Networks.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's a lot of groups as well, there's the meetups, I don't know if you know the meetups groups, and there's loads and there's thousands of those around London. And I think that a lot of those are really good because you get a lot of like-minded people together and to kind of share ideas and share kind of networks and contacts. I think there's also, I mean, in London there's a lot of accelerator programs, which is, you know, is mainly for kind of, there's a lot of social accelerators, but there's also a lot of kind of business accelerators that if you've got a really good idea can take on your kind of your idea and help you develop. And when we have the Bethnal Green Ventures in Makerversity, who are social tech startups, and they have a new cohort every 6 months, and they come in and they have a really good idea and they're supported and they're funded and they're given desk space and developed with ideas. And I know we've had a few members that have come through the Design Council Spark scheme, so they kind of look out for really kind of interesting designers and they support them, and I think they pick 2 every year and then they put them on like a development program. So there's all sorts of programs and competitions and things like that. It's just kind of getting out there and I'd say just almost apply for everything or kind of put your name forward for everything because you might get some of it. It's a bit like the lottery, but hopefully better odds.
Brilliant, thank you. Actually, in the previous session, which was Mind the Skills Gap, Paul Drake had made a point of talking about purpose, profit, creativity. So, you know, like people aren't short of ideas. Yeah. It's just having the capacity to turn them into something. Do we have any other questions in the audience?
Hi, me again. I've got a question. How do you deal with rejection? What I mean is that you said that you give people 60 seconds to pitch an idea, mentorship, all these kind of things. How do you deal with this young generation who think that they are so amazing? How do you tell them that sometimes their ideas are crap? Because that's a very important thing. I mean, not all ideas are good. Not all ideas are going to work. Some things have already been done. How do you deal with that?
We encourage them to fail fast. So, you know, the interesting thing about ideas and opinions is I might think something's really crap, but, you know, the market will dictate otherwise. So we encourage them to, you know, produce the smallest thing they can and start researching and testing as much as they can. So test as the smallest thing you can see in the market and see if there's any value in the idea. And it might only take a weekend of sending out questionnaires and asking the community, do you think this is a good idea? And I think that kind of feedback will respond back to them and they'll kind of realize, you know, whether this idea will fly or whether it will sink. So it's all about testing ideas and failing as fast as you can. Because, you know, one person's idea might be crap to you, but in a different market it might work. So it's about testing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's also developing resilience, to be honest. I mean, I think a lot of the young people that I've ever worked with, it's kind of not... The end product of making something successful isn't necessarily what it's about. It's about developing the confidence and the resilience to be able to try things and to not be crushed every time that something fails. And I know when I used to do music stuff with young people, everybody wanted to be a rapper or everybody wanted to be a producer. And, you know, it would have been easy to go say, oh, yeah, no, you're great, I'm sure you'll do well. But it was also about kind of, with each of them, kind of, one, being really truthful and trying to be as honest as you can be, but also, two, making sure that they developed a range of skills so that they could adapt it to other industries and to other jobs. So, I mean, we had young people that wanted to be performers, but actually weren't very good. But then trying to say, well, actually, if your interest is music, you could also work as a music manager, you could work as a tour manager, you could work behind the scenes. So actually sort of also making young people aware, or making anybody aware, that there are other avenues into the industry that you want to do. There isn't just the kind of the perhaps the most sort of public facing thing that you want to do.
I'll just echo that completely.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Could I have a time check, actually?
Well, you had time for one more question, but they're being shy, so that's okay.
Okay. Perhaps I can ask another question of you guys. And it's quite a general one, I suppose, but ideally, in 10 years' time, then, what would the learning landscape look like to you?
I think just looking at the industry right now, I think there's going to be osmosis of our industries kind of colliding and collaborating. Just taking WeWork, for example. WeWork is a co-working space, which is, I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, they've popped up everywhere, and they're valued at 10 billion. And it's a co-working space. And the reason they're doing so successfully is because they integrate different industries in one space. And it's similar to what we do. You put passionate people in a room together and you kind of see collaborations happening, where architects work with different designers, where they work with musicians. So I think there's going to be osmosis of different industries kind of collaborating. And the thing about our industry is now is they're accelerating so fast, so it's going to change in such a way that it won't even be describable to what we understand it as today. So I think there's going to be far more collaborations, which is why I think you guys should, network in different industries and start meeting people from different sectors. Go to these accelerator programs, go to these tech events, go to these artistic events, because collaboration is going to be the key in a couple of years, I think.
Thank you. Oliver?
I think about education in 10 years is virtually impossible, I think. The rate of change and the seismic shifts going on at the moment around drive for apprenticeships, around college closures, around thinking new ways of doing things online. It's hard to see, but I think that already the landscape has massively changed, and I don't see it sort of coagulating or stopping changing anytime soon. So I think watch this space is probably the best way to finish.
I think collaboration is probably, I'd agree, is one of the sort of the main areas that I think it'd be good to see. I think also, if I'm kind of looking at like from an ideal point of view, I would hope that the formal education, like higher education, would be free, or at least go back to how it was, without sounding too old,
we can dream.
In my day. But I think I would hope that kind of bubble would burst as far as like trying to push up, trying to push too many people in and charge, overcharge them and things, because. And that it would go back to being, available to a lot more people, and a lot more kind of interaction between industry and young people from 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old, all the way up to adulthood. Because I think otherwise young people are never going to be kind of have the right skills developed for the industries they want to go into without them either needing extra tutoring, extra courses, and parents and resources that they might not have access to.
Just bringing up Sarah's point about the earlier point was, I think it's also about diversity in their training, and for people to understand, you're going to have to train yourself in different remits of not just your industry, understanding the wider remit of what is happening in your communities and what's happening in the industries, because it's changing so fast. So, make sure you educate yourself on what's happening in these industries.
Fantastic. I think, we just have a little bit more time, so I just want to see if any of you have any advice that you'd like to leave with the participants here in the room about alternative learning, accessing it, developing oneself.
I'd just say don't underestimate the power of reading. Seriously, I mean it's forgotten about really, but it's amazing how much you can teach yourself just through reading, and it's quite simple, and just keep. I suppose always strive to improve. It doesn't matter what level you're at, but I think it's important if you have the outlook that I will try and learn something new, or challenge myself on something, reflect on what you've been doing. I think that's all you can ask really from learners.
Thank you.
I just think get out there. You guys are all here, so you're obviously kind of being active in what you're doing. But I think, we've mentioned networking quite a lot, but I don't think you can underestimate the power of just being out there and just meeting people, because, my first job, I went to uni and spent 3 years studying kind of media and cultural studies, but then got my first job in the music industry because I'd been to gigs and met the person that ran the company and hounded her for 3 months to give me a job, and she wasn't interested in what I'd done at university. She wasn't interested in my qualifications. She was just like, well, I see you all the time when I'm out. I see you at every gig. You're obviously keen. And I just think that power of just being out there and being at things and putting your work online and putting, trying to get whatever your practice is, trying to get your work out there. I just think, it can't be underestimated, because nobody's going to see you if you're at home. Nobody's going to see you if your work's on your hard drive or in your house, or And you know, it might take you a while to get there, but it's, I think, just get out. And if you're in London, I mean, it's just an amazing, you know, there's opportunities galore in this city. We're very lucky to have all of that here. So just keep going, I'd say.
No talk, all action. You know, just keep doing it. Make sure you guys connect with different industries, talk to each other. Vouching from the startup community, I can say that, you know, everyone, even at the senior most level on some of these startups, we understand the struggle of bringing an idea from a grassroots level to, you know, $1 million company. And you never really lose that. So you can talk to a CEO who's raised millions and they're still willing to spend the time and sit with you because they understand the kind of, you know, that anxiety of having this idea and producing it into, you know, a company. So make sure you make those connections and speak to different industries. And everyone's super friendly.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah, Oliver, and Zoheb. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let's give them a round of applause.